Baba Yaga. A. Baba Yaga is a dark, fierce forest demon. She is gaunt and crooked with a long, bony nose resembling a bird's beak. Her skin is yellowed and wrinkled, covered in moss and fungi. Her eyes are deep and black, devoid of life, and her teeth are sharp like knives. She wears a dark, stained, ragged cloak stitched from the hides of forest animals. Baba Yaga flies in a large, enchanted mortar, holding a long bone broom to sweep away her tracks. Around her, ravens and other terrifying creatures swirl, accentuating her mystical and menacing aura. Koshai the Deathless. Koshai is tall and skeletal, his skin clinging to his bones like an old, dried mummy. His eyes shine with a cold, hollow gaze, and his lips are thin and barely visible. His hair is black streaked with silver, hanging like shadows around his face. He wears armor that appears to be forged from dark metals with skull and bone motifs, symbolizing mortality. He holds a long, dark, enchanted sword, capable of severing any tie to life. Koshai is surrounded by thin wisps of smoke, like a black mist, symbolizing his immortal and menacing nature. The Snow Maiden Snegorotchka. This character, usually gentle, appears here as cold and ruthless. Her skin is bluish and pale, almost translucent like ice, and her eyes are empty and emotionless. Her hair is long, frosty white, falling around her like snowflakes, frosting everything she touches. She wears a white ice dress that seems to be made of countless tiny crystals, leaving a cold mist in the air with every step. Snegorotchka moves silently, but her touch can instantly freeze anything alive, both her strength and her curse. Ivan, often known as the Fool, here appears as a mysterious and dark warrior. His face is scarred, and his eyes are empty and carefree, as though hiding an unrevealed darkness within. His hair is unkempt and gray, his clothes torn but once bearing a heroic insignia, reflecting a forgotten glory. He leans on a heavy, black sword marked by the signs of ancient battles. Ivan walks silently, exuding sadness and inevitable danger, and though he seems ordinary at first glance, a dark, unknown power lies within him. Zmygornik. And this three-headed dragon is depicted as terrifying and demonic. Each head has sharp, twisted teeth, and its tongues hiss and burn, emitting dark, poisonous smoke. Its scales are dark green and black, thickly covered in soot, as though wrapped in an eternal cloud of ash. Its claws are long and curled, like the roots of blackened trees, and its wings tear through the air with ominous force. When it breathes, the ground beneath it melts from the intense heat. Vodyanoi. Vodyanoi, the spirit of rivers and ponds, resembles a cold, murky nightmare. His skin is green and wet, covered in layers of algae and insects. His face is distorted and terrifying, with bulging eyes and a hideously twisted gaze. His arms are long and thin, resembling the roots of aquatic plants, and his fingers wriggle like living creatures. Surrounding him are dark, transparent water spirits, and the ground around him remains damp and mysterious. Leshy, the forest guardian, appears as a spectral and frightening figure. His body seems made of thin, twisted tree branches, and his eyes shine a deep green, like the glow of swampy marshes. His face is cracked and wrinkled, resembling a cluster of branches, with hollow pits where his eyes should be. He moves silently among the trees, blending with the darkness of the forest, leaving behind a trail of shadows that make the ground tremble in his wake. Ruzalka is a river and lake spirit, but her beauty has turned into a symbol of dread and treachery. Her skin is waxy white, and her face appears drained of any color. Her eyes are large and empty, with deep shadows under them. Her hair is long, dark, and wet, falling like seaweed over her shoulders. She wears a dress seemingly made of river water and water lilies. When she whispers, her voice is like the sorrow of dark waters, and anyone who sees her feels a deep, cold loneliness. Morosko, the spirit of frost, is icy and terrifying. His skin is translucent and crystal blue, covered in frost. His eyes are dull, almost lifeless, and they shine with a deep, icy stare. His hair is like ice crystals, long and silver, and his clothes seem made of a shimmering layer of ice. When he speaks, his voice echoes across the snowy plains, and his touch brings instant, frigid death. These dark creatures are Baba Yaga's servant, shadowy beings that always surround her. They are small and hunchbacked, covered in thick, dark fur that reaches their shoulders. Their faces are a mixture of skull and animal features, and their eyes glow red with fierce intensity. Their claws are long and crooked, and their bodies curl and twist like snakes. They move silently and obey Baba Yaga's every command. V is a being from the deepest realms of night, considered a terrifying lord of demons. His body is large and heavy, as if made of dense fog in which bones float. His face is hidden in thick shadows, and his eyes are pitch black and emotionless. For him to see, other demons must lift his enormous heavy eyelids, which seem to drape the world in darkness. His gaze brings fear and evil, and he can see into the deepest secrets of the soul. Liko, the spirit of misfortune, is thin and tall, with only one large eye in the center of its forehead. His skin is nearly transparent, pale and sickly yellow, and his single eye constantly gleams with a wicked, hungry gaze. His mouth is twisted into a misshapen grin, filled with sharp teeth that look unearthly. He wears a long, tattered cloak that flutters like a shadow in the wind. Liko is a harbinger of loneliness and misfortune, appearing only to spread suffering. Kikimora is a household spirit, but in this version she's portrayed as menacing and eerie. Her figure is weak and twisted, and her head appears unnaturally large, covered in dirty, tangled hair. Her eyes are empty, with a glint of madness, and her skin is dark and dry, like decayed, mold-covered wood. She wears old, tattered rags and moves silently around the house, bringing bad energy and sickness. Domovoy is usually known as the guardian spirit of the house, but here he appears creepy and disturbing. He is small, hunched, with a large, bent back and long, hairy fingers. His skin is grayish-brown and rough, like tree bark. His eyes are small, red, and constantly glinting in the dark. He wears rags and looks abandoned and fierce. Domovoy can be vengeful and malicious, spreading a bad aura and bringing misfortune to the household if not respected.